Under your feet, the moon is pulsing. You feel danger with every pore of your body. The lifeless satellite, or so you thought, stays still for a second before knocking you down to the ground with a powerful tremor. Is it a moonquake? For years, scientists believed the moon was completely inactive, but the newest evidence seems to suggest that this idea is totally wrong. Researchers from the University of Maryland have recently discovered 266 mysterious ridges on the far side of the moon. And these ridges likely point to recent geological activity. So, are we really talking moonquakes? Well, kind of. The ridges are located in volcanic regions that formed 3.2 to 3.6 billion years ago. But they appear much younger than expected. Typically found in clusters of 10 to 40. They're often located in areas where the moon's surface is structurally weaker. Now, when astronomers speak about recent, don't take their words literally. They don't mean last year or even decade. Most models scientists created suggested that the moon's geological activity ended 2.5 to 3 billion years ago. But the new information hints at the possibility that these formations have been active within the last billion years. Some of the smaller ridges seem to have formed as recently as 200 million years ago, and that is considered relatively young on the moon's timescale. It means that the moon may still be experiencing geological changes today. These discoveries kinda challenge our understanding of the moon's history and evolution. But how did scientists come to these conclusions anyway? Researchers from the University of Maryland and the Smithsonian Institution used crater counting to estimate the age of lunar ridges. It works like this. Surfaces with fewer craters are younger, and the more craters some region has, the older it is. Plus, the analysis showed that some ridges cut through already existing craters, meaning they likely formed around 160 million years ago. In geological terms, this is very recent, suggesting that these ridge-forming processes may still be happening. Another cool thing is that the ridges on both the near and far sides of the moon are similar, which means they may have formed through the same geological processes, having been shaped by the same forces. These forces might include the moon's gradual shrinking, thermal contraction, and shifts in its orbit. We'll talk about it a bit later. Another argument supporting the idea of a still active moon is decades-old data from the Apollo missions. They had already detected shallow moonquakes with the Apollo Lunar Seismic Experiment, recording 28 quakes ranging from magnitude 1.5 to 5. Researchers believe that these ridges may be linked to similar seismic activity. Now, about that bizarre shrinking of our natural satellite. Scientists believe the moon formed about 4.5 billion years ago when a Mars-sized object collided with early Earth. This catastrophic impact likely sent bunches of superheated material into space. Eventually, they came together and formed the moon. In its early years, the moon was just a molten world, shaking from intense volcanic and seismic activity. So, the moon used to be a molten mess floating through space. But when did it actually solidify? Scientists have finally figured it out, 4.43 billion years ago. This was a huge turning point, not just for the moon, but for Earth too. After all, the giant impact that formed the moon might have also been the final blow that made Earth stable enough to support life. In any case, billions of years passed. The moon gradually cooled and contracted. And now look at this modern-day rocky sphere illuminating our nights. But the moon isn't completely rigid yet. It still keeps cooling. And this slow cooling of its core might be one possible reason for the moon's continued activity. As it cools, the moon's interior contracts, which leads to cracks and shifts in the crust. One of the clearest signs of this contraction is found in the lunar maria. See these large, dark patches on the moon? Those are called maria, areas formed when lava filled ancient asteroid impact craters and then solidified. Then, over time, the cooling and contracting crust created these wrinkle ridges. Another factor of the ongoing geological activity could be the Moon's gravitational interactions with Earth. Such non-stop powerful interactions likely create surface stress and trigger tectonic movements. It's all good and exciting, but can this activity on the Moon actually affect humans? In a sense, it can. The Moon has long been seen as a stable place for future bases and resource extraction. But the discovery of this ongoing geological activity is pretty worrying. If the surface is still shifting, future settlements, infrastructure, and mining operations could face serious risks. That's why, at the moment, we need seismometers and ground-penetrating radars to better understand these movements. It will allow us to assess potential dangers before any long-term missions begin. By the way, there's another potential problem future lunar missions might have to deal with, and it's moon dust, aka regolith. Apollo astronauts quickly learned that this jagged, sticky dust gets everywhere and can damage suits, equipment, and even health. A new study from Texas A&M engineers found another problem. When rockets land or take off, they kick up regolith, which can become a collision hazard, especially with many spacecraft bringing crews and cargo to the Moon. Lunar regolith comes in all sizes, from tiny dust particles to large rocks. The main ingredient in moon dust is fine silicate materials, about 70 microns in size, like a human hair. They formed over billions of years as meteors and asteroids smashed into the Moon's surface, grinding much of it into powder. Unlike Earth, the Moon has almost no atmosphere. It's incredibly thin, so there's no wind or water to smooth out the dust. On top of that, constant exposure to solar wind has given the regolith an electrostatic charge, making it stick to anything it touches. Apollo astronauts quickly found this out the hard way. Moon dust clung to their suits, got trapped inside their landers, and stuck to everything. Worse, it became a health hazard, causing eye irritation and breathing problems inside their spacecraft. But at the moment, it seems like a problem for future us. A much more important issue is finding water to support future missions, and China is going to deal with it. It's getting ready for a big mission to look for hidden ice on the Moon. As part of the Chang'e 7 mission in 2026, a flying robot will explore deep craters at the Moon's south pole, where ice might be trapped. If they manage to confirm it, this could be a game changer for future lunar missions. Astronauts will have a water source and even fuel for space travel. The mission is a key step in China's plan to land astronauts on the Moon within 5 years. While signs of water have been found before, like in soil samples from Chang'e 5's probe and observations by NASA and Indian spacecraft, scientists believe that deep ice deposits are the real key to supporting future missions. The south pole of the Moon has some incredibly deep craters, and experts think ice could be hiding inside them. The flying robot will try to explore one or more of these craters after landing. If it does find the ice, it could make long-term Moon missions much cheaper and more practical, helping astronauts live and work on the Moon. Some scientists also think that this discovery could offer us some clues about extraterrestrial life. In any case, whether we find water on the Moon and learn to deal with that pesky dust or not, the recent discovery of those young lunar ridges is a game changer. If the Moon is still geologically active, it means we don't know as much about our closest neighbor as we thought. What else could the Moon be hiding? Are we really prepared for the idea that this lifeless satellite might actually be more dynamic than we imagined? Future missions, which might not be as safe as we once believed, will probably show. The Moon's volcanoes are not dormant, and they can erupt any minute. For years, we lived knowing nothing about it, but now it's officially proven thanks to China's Chang'e 5 mission's shocking discovery. The lunar soil samples it brought back to Earth contained something absolutely unexpected, hinting that volcanic eruptions may have occurred on the Moon as recently as 123 million years ago. Geologically, that's practically yesterday. But the big question is, are we safe down here on Earth? We've long known that the moon was once volcanically active due to the dark regions, lunar maria, on its surface. These maria, the dark plains that give the moon its characteristic markings, are ancient lava flows that date back to around 3 to 3.8 billion years ago. Until recently, scientists thought that those ancient flows marked the end of the moon's volcanic activity. But the Chang'e 5 mission brought back lunar soil that included several microscopic glass beads, and 3 of them in particular revealed an extraordinary story. They formed around 123 million years ago from volcanic eruptions. An uncertainty range is a mere 15 million years. The discovery of those tiny beads is super important because of their composition and rarity. Measuring between 20 to 400 microns, which is smaller than a grain of sand, these beads are volcanic in origin. And this fact sets them apart from most other lunar glass beads, which typically form due to meteor impacts. Impact events on the moon create glass by melting surface rock with incredible heat and pressure. The result is tiny glass beads scattered all over the landscape. Yet, the volcanic beads identified in Chang'e 5's sample were formed by magma erupting from beneath the moon's crust and cooling it into glass as it reached the surface. By using uranium-lead dating, which measures the decay of uranium into lead within the beads, scientists managed to pinpoint their age with striking accuracy. The results suggest that the last known volcanic activity on the moon happened within the past 200 million years, making it a recent event in the moon's long history. This discovery also aligns with prior observations of unusual surface features known as irregular mare patches. Those are smooth mounds surrounded by rocky terrain. They were first spotted by NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter in 2014. These patches appear much younger than other lunar features, potentially formed by volcanic eruptions less than 100 million years ago. Before Chang'e 5's glass beads, these irregular mare patches were among the best evidence of recent volcanic activity on the moon. Yet, without confirmation, their origins remain uncertain. And now, the glass beads confirm volcanic action. The findings raise new questions about the moon's inner workings. In particular, how could it retain enough heat to sustain volcanic eruptions? We thought that the moon had cooled significantly after its formation 4.5 billion years ago, which made it volcanically inactive. And without tectonic activity or an atmosphere, the moon should have shed its internal heat long ago. Yet the beads suggest the possibility of some localized heat sources within the moon's mantle. Scientists think that heat-producing elements such as potassium and thorium might be creating small, warm pockets which generate enough heat to melt rock and trigger isolated volcanic eruptions. But wait, beyond rewriting the moon's history, this discovery adds an intriguing twist to ongoing studies of transient lunar phenomena. These sightings, often reported as ghostly glows or hazes by amateur astronomers, remain unconfirmed by scientific probes. Some experts just dismiss them as illusions caused by Earth's atmosphere. But if the moon has small pockets of volcanic or outgassing activity, TLP might have a real basis. Gases emitted from beneath the surface could explain such mysterious glows and possibly be a hint of residual volcanic action on the moon. Now, if volcanic activity still lingers on the moon, this might have exciting implications for future lunar missions. In the coming decades, astronauts might be able to use volcanic heat for generating power, melting ice into water, or even warming bases built into the frigid lunar surface. But recent geological discoveries aren't limited to Earth's natural satellite. We learn more about volcanic moons beyond our solar system too. The detection of a possibly volcanic exomoon orbiting exoplanet WASP-49b around 635 light-years away means that volcanic activity may be a common feature among moons. Up until now, Jupiter's moon, Io, held the title of the most volcanic body we know about. But researchers at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory may have found a new candidate. This potential exomoon came to light when scientists observed a cloud of sodium gas around the exoplanet. But the thing is, sodium clouds are unusual in planetary atmospheres and can suggest volcanic activity. The sodium cloud near WASP-49b had a bizarre, unexpected behavior. It was moving erratically, shifting size, and occupying a space too large to be explained by the exoplanet's own atmosphere. Scientists thought the cloud could actually be generated by a volcanically active exomoon in orbit around WASP-49b. Volcanic moons like Io are known to release gases such as sulfur dioxide, sodium, and potassium, which form massive clouds around their parent planets. Io, for instance, regularly produces vast amounts of gas that form a cloud encircling Jupiter, up to 1,000 times the size of the gas giant itself. If something similar occurs near WASP-49b, the gas cloud could be a clue to volcanic activity on an exomoon orbiting the planet. Observations from the European Southern Observatory's Very Large Telescope in Chile seems to confirm this theory. The sodium cloud around WASP-49b is positioned high above the exoplanet's atmosphere and behaves in ways that don't match the exoplanet's 2.8 Earth day orbit. This could suggest that it originates from a separate body, likely a volcanically active moon. Additionally, WASP-49b and its host star consist primarily of hydrogen and helium, which makes the sodium cloud even more unusual. The observed rate of sodium release, over 220,000 pounds per second, can be a sign of an immensely powerful volcanic source. If scientists verify the existence of this exomoon, it would be the first discovery of a volcanic exomoon. Back in our solar system, Io remains the main space object helping us understand volcanic moons. Recently, NASA's Juno spacecraft provided some of the closest images of Io since the Galileo mission over 25 years ago. Io's intense volcanic activity is caused by tidal heating, the result of the gravitational pull of Jupiter and nearby moons, like Europa. This tug-of-war generates immense friction within Io, producing heat that fuels continuous volcanic eruptions. One of Juno's most exciting recent findings was a new volcano that appeared just south of Io's equator. Juno's images show a large, complex volcanic region, approximately 111 by 111 miles in size. The craziest thing? It wasn't there when Galileo imaged the same spot in 1997. This new volcano formed near the previously known volcano Canehekele. Researchers say that this new volcanic structure is a great change that highlights the dynamic nature of Io's surface. Io's equatorial region is home to most of its volcanoes because of the concentrated tidal heating it experiences. The most powerful eruptions emit sulfurous gases and produce bright lava flows. They cover the moon in colorful, sulfur-rich deposits. JunoCam's image, taken from about 1,570 miles away, shows Io dramatically lit by sunlight reflected off Jupiter. And you can see a stunning view of its constantly changing volcanic surface. Despite these detailed observations, there are still many mysteries about Io's volcanism. Scientists are particularly curious about how tidal heating affects Io's interior, and whether it has a subsurface magma ocean. Plus, researchers try to understand what triggers different types of eruptions. For example, plumes versus lava flows, and how volcanic gases shape Io's surface and thin atmosphere. The study of volcanic moons from Io to the possible exomoon near WASP-49b sheds light on how tidal forces create volcanic activity in different moons. In icy moons like Europa, tidal heating sustains liquid oceans beneath the surface, creating potential habitats for life. But for Io without an ocean, The same forces instead generate powerful volcanic activity. Plus, if volcanic exomoons do exist, like the one possibly orbiting WASP-49b, we might soon discover more volcanic bodies across the galaxy. An asteroid broke off the moon and now it's super close to Earth. Does it pose a danger to us? Kama'oalewa, also known as 2016 HO3, spins super quickly as it orbits near our planet. Let's call it HO3 for short. Astronomers found it on April 27, 2016. Compared to other asteroids, it's tiny. On Earth, though, it would be the size of a small building, or about half the size of the London Eye Ferris wheel. They discovered it in Hawaii, and its name roughly translates to a fragment of something that seems to wobble. After some study, they realized that this asteroid might be a chunk of the moon that got blasted into space. There's a part of the moon called Giordano Bruno crater, named after an Italian philosopher, that guy who had to pay quite the price for his ideas. If you look at it from space, Giordano Bruno stands out because it's surrounded by some rays of material. They're super huge, stretching over 93 miles and are still bright. This means that an enormous boom once happened there. There's an interesting story about this. In 1178, 5 monks were traveling in Canterbury, England. Suddenly, they saw something strange happening on the moon. They said it looked like the moon was splitting, with flames and sparks. Then there was a darkening that spread all across the lunar surface. In the 20th century, scientists found these records and thought that these monks saw the formation of the Giordano Bruno crater. But later it turned out that the crater is about 4 million years old. And thank the stars, because such a massive impact, if it really happened in the 12th century, would have gone crazy on our planet. It would have caused a huge meteor storm on Earth. In any case, our HO3 is most likely a piece of the moon that broke off during that impact 4 million years ago. Luckily, there's no need to panic about it. When astronomers spotted this sudden moon piece, they quickly tracked its orbit. Turns out, it won't collide with us anytime soon. It's going to be our quasi-satellite for at least 300 more years, meaning it'll follow a path around the Sun that keeps it close to Earth without colliding. Its orbit is wild, though. It seems to be constantly looping around our planet in some pretty unique loops, moving closer and going away, up and down. And then somewhere in the 24th century, it will go even more crazy, switching to a horseshoe orbit, slowly going away from us. Could HO3 collide with us someday? Maybe, but that would happen over millions of years, when it would leave its current orbit and collide with Earth, Venus, or even the Sun itself. Or maybe entirely ejected from the solar system. Even though it's one of the closest asteroids ever discovered, it's also one of the smallest and most stable ones. This discovery also opens up some exciting ideas about life in the universe. We see that rocks can travel between celestial bodies. There is a theory that life could have been spread all across the universe by traveling on these rocks like on some space Ubers, or at least the building blocks of life like carbon. Maybe life even hitchhiked to our planet on rocks from Mars. HO3 probably doesn't carry any life, but the fact that it can travel for millions of years carrying stuff on it and feeling fine supports this theory. Astronomers want to send something to investigate HO3. Back in 2017, a group of students gave an idea of using a spacecraft for it. The China National Space Administration wants to send a robotic probe to HO3 somewhere in 2025. The robot should fly there, collect samples, and bring them back to Earth for study. Unfortunately, you can't see this asteroid in the sky with the naked eye. Its size is about 130 to 330 feet in diameter, so it would be too tiny and dim to see without a super powerful telescope. But there is an asteroid that you'll be able to see, and it will be insane. In 2029, a large asteroid will pass so close to Earth that it will be visible to the naked eye. Make sure not to miss it, because this is a once-in-a-thousand-year event. The asteroid is known as 2004 MN4, or Apophis for short. It's much bigger than HO3, about 1,210 feet wide. This will be the closest asteroid passage ever. This one actually caused some panic back in December 2004, all because there was a 2.7% chance that it could hit Earth in 2029. People were horrified. Even the name, Apophis, is inspired by an evil serpent from ancient Egyptian mythology. A huge monster that fought Ra and always tried to swallow the sun and destroy the planet. Luckily, when scientists got more data, they realized that it would pass pretty close to us in 2029, and we'd be able to see it in the sky. But then, it will just fly away like a chill asteroid. There was another worry though. That during its close pass, Apophis might travel through something called a gravitational keyhole. Basically, that it could travel through a specific narrow region of space which would accidentally alter its orbit. And then it would make an epic comeback in 2036, like the planet from the movie Melancholia. However, after some calculations, scientists ruled out this possibility as well. Apophis will still come quite close to us in 2036, but it will be about as far away as Venus is when it overtakes Earth. And then, Apophis and Earth will just go their own separate ways. On average, an asteroid the size of Apophis is only expected to hit Earth once every 80,000 years. And if it did hit us, it would completely destroy a huge area, causing earthquakes and tsunamis all around the world. But it wouldn't cause an apocalypse or anything like that. You'd only be able to see Apophis from Europe, Africa, and Western Asia. So if you want to see it, you might need to travel. The asteroid will look like a fast-moving star in the night sky, shining bright enough to be seen without any special equipment. It would be easy to spot at night, though city lights might make it harder to see. Now, can you imagine that these are not the only guys hanging nearby? Both HO3 and Apophis are part of the so-called Apollo orbit asteroids. These are the asteroids with orbits going around Earth, an entire group of dangerous fellas. Since they cross Earth's orbit, they have the potential to come close to or even collide with our planet. The first asteroid of this group to be discovered was 1862 Apollo, named after the Greek deity of the sun. It was first discovered in 1932, and the group was named after it. This one was even bigger, almost a mile in size. In fact, it's so huge that it even has its own tiny moon. Apollo crosses orbits of not just Earth, but also Venus and Mars. Fun fact, even though it was the first one of its kind, telescopes accidentally lost it out of view for over 40 years. So scientists went, oh well, let's just keep the count of things we can see. When Apollo was rediscovered in 1973, it wasn't the first asteroid on the list and got a big number in its name. Apollo will fly near us during the next hundreds of years. In 2075, it will be somewhere around Venus, but it should fly by as well. In any case, there's no need to worry, because astronomers are keeping a close track on these guys. If we were in any immediate danger, we'd have known. In order for an asteroid to totally destroy life on our planet, it should be bigger than 6 miles in diameter, like the one that helped to wipe out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. But these guys are so crazy rare, we'd probably live on other planets by the time they arrive on Earth.
Now, don't get all upset, but the moon is shrinking and getting wrinkled, pretty much like a grape turning into a raisin. That happens because our natural satellite has been retaining its inner heat for over 4 billion years, but its core is gradually cooling down and becoming more dense, like me. Unlike a grape's flexible skin, the moon's surface is pretty brittle. This brittleness causes faults to form where different sections of the crust push up against each other, leading to what scientists call moonquakes. So far, our satellite has shrunk by around 150 feet in circumference. It's such a tiny change that it won't affect the look of eclipses or the phases of the moon. Even tidal cycles won't be affected since the moon's mass hasn't really changed. The shrinking process won't directly affect us down here, but that doesn't mean that all humans are safe. Moonquakes, caused by the shrinking process, have been a concern for years. During the famous Apollo missions, NASA astronauts left seismometers at different points on the moon. Those are devices capable of identifying seismic activity on the lunar surface with exceptional precision. The equipment was operational for several years, and it managed to capture over 12,000 moonquakes, ranging in magnitudes from 2 to 5. Up until 1977, the team was able to identify 4 distinct types of quakes. Some tremors, like those caused by meteorite impacts, were relatively easy to identify. But the cause of the so-called shallow moonquakes remains a mystery to scientists, and that can be an obstacle to future missions on lunar soil. As the name suggests, shallow moonquakes occur relatively close to the surface, typically between 30 to 135 miles beneath the surface. Recent research suggests that these tremors are triggered by the compression of the moon's surface, leading to the formation of thrust faults, where one surface layer is pushed up over another. This study also discovered where the epicenters of the strongest ones were. It all started in the South Pole region, precisely where we want to settle down. Interest in the lunar South Pole peaked in 2023, when India's Chandrayaan mission successfully landed and deployed a rover to explore the area. NASA also has plans for the same spot. And their ambitious goal is to take astronauts there for the very first time. The Artemis 3 mission, scheduled for 2026, currently has 13 potential landing spots at the South Pole, represented by the blue squares here. One of the options is situated within a geological feature called de Gerlach Rim 2, which is a strategic area for exploration. It might have ice, because parts of it are completely in the dark. But it's close enough to areas that do have sunlight, which is crucial as a source of power. Now, take a look at the pink dots on that same map. They represent possible epicenters of the strongest moonquakes recorded by the Apollo missions. That means that thrust faults in the area could be relatively young and potentially active, representing a real danger to the Artemis 3 crew. These astronauts will journey to lunar orbit over the course of 30 days. And 2 crew members will descend to the surface, spending about a week at the South Pole. Their moonwalk will be particularly challenging, given the extreme temperatures of these permanently shadowed regions. The presence of moonquakes and possible landslides only adds more danger to this mission, as this phenomenon is far more frightening than earthquakes. The strongest moonquake ever recorded had a magnitude of 5.7. You might think that's not a big deal, considering that countries like Chile, Colombia, and Papua New Guinea experienced earthquakes of similar magnitude in 2023 without significant damage. But the gravitational pull on the Moon is relatively weaker than on Earth, so what feels like a gentle tremor on our planet might be a real ground-shaking event up there. This happens because you're not as firmly connected to the surface of the Moon as you are on Earth, meaning that seismic waves can cause the surface to move more freely. There's also a huge difference in duration. Earthquakes typically last between 10 and 30 seconds, with some lasting up to 2 minutes. A moonquake can persist much longer than that. Our satellite is essentially a solid, rigid, and dry sphere. So when a tremor shakes the Moon's surface, it resonates powerfully without any natural means of dissipation. Moonquakes can last for a good 10 minutes or even longer, with little tremors sticking around for hours afterwards. Now, these new findings about shallow moonquakes won't actually change the potential landing sites for Artemis 3, and they won't affect the duration of the mission either. That's because accurately estimating how often a specific region experiences these tremors is tricky and unpredictable. What scientists do know is that these shallow quakes aren't very common and pose a low risk to short-term missions on the lunar surface. But that situation changes completely if we consider long-term habitation on the Moon, and that could happen sooner than we expect. The Artemis 3 mission represents an important first step towards space colonization. China is also making the first moves to establish a permanent lunar base at the South Pole by 2040. Their strategy involves utilizing 3D printing and brick production from lunar soil for constructing the moon base. That definitely sounds fascinating, but putting together a setup like that comes with a bunch of challenges. including dealing with intense cosmic radiation, the lack of water, and of course, long-lasting moonquakes. Over billions of years, the surface of the moon has been hit by asteroids and comets, causing bits and pieces to constantly break off from the impacts. Because of this, all the surface material is pretty loosely packed, so when there are quakes, slopes in the same area can become susceptible to landslides or new faults opening up. Future settlements located too close to these unstable slopes could put everyone living inside these lunar bases at risk. Moon dust adds another layer of complexity because, without erosion or water to smooth it out, it can harden to the point of being as tough as glass. If we really want to understand how dangerous moonquakes might be for people living and working on the moon in the future, space agencies still need to map out and get new seismic data, and not just from the South Pole, but from the entire satellite. In 2025, the Far-Side Seismic Suite mission, or FSS, plans to deploy two of the most high-precision seismometers ever built to the Schrödinger crater, which is located on the dark side of the moon. Finding out what's happening on the ground there is crucial for understanding the complex lunar structure and its internal dynamics. Scientists are still trying to figure out whether the lack of recorded seismic activity on the far side of the moon is due to current instruments not being capable of detecting it, or if it's due to some kind of interference from melted material in the mantle. Once they have this answer, it will be easier to fully understand the phenomenon of shallow moonquakes and assess their implications for future neighborhoods on our natural satellite. Now, you may have heard that Earth is also shrinking, but it's a different process. Basically, the moon is getting smaller mainly because its core is cooling down naturally. The Earth's core is cooling too, but our planet got its crust with tectonic plates, unlike the moon, which only has one plate. So the energy from Earth's core shifts those plates around or comes through volcanic eruptions. Earth is actually losing mass overall due to atmospheric loss. Our planet loses about 100 million pounds of mass per year, mostly from a leaky atmosphere. Earth's gravity isn't strong enough to retain the lightest particles, like hydrogen and helium, which escape into space. But don't worry, these numbers aren't cause for alarm, considering that our planet's atmosphere weighs about 5 quadrillion tons, a number I can't even imagine. So, in other words, it would take many times the current age of the universe for it to completely evaporate. Well, that makes me breathe easier. How about you? August 23, 2023, a day when India's Chandrayaan-3 spacecraft made history by becoming the first to touch down on the lunar South Pole, a place we can't normally see from Earth. What makes this lunar hideaway so fascinating to scientists? Well, it turns out it's hiding something precious: lunar ice. This place is believed to be more abundant with this ice than what we found up north. And it's not hard to see why scientists are so buzzed up about it. It's a frozen water source, and it could become our key to building a permanent lunar home, or even fueling missions all the way to Mars. Scientists knew about this ice for over 2 decades, since the NASA spacecraft accidentally stumbled upon it during one of the missions. Then in 2018, NASA triumphantly declared that they're 100% sure about it. They said that the south pole of the moon is abundant with water. Now, picture this. Future lunar settlers could tap into this water supply. It could help us sustain life in the barren lunar landscape. Plus, by cleverly splitting the water into oxygen and hydrogen, we could receive both air and rocket fuel. All this will make moon missions more feasible and self-sustaining. It's also a great glimpse into the past. This ice, maybe as old as the moon itself, could unlock the moon's and Earth's deep mysteries. But it turns out that water isn't rare in space at all. There might be lots of planets out there where life could thrive. We know this because we started finding water vapor around stars, and this water is remarkably similar to the water in our own solar system. This discovery suggests that the water on Earth originally came from space. Water forms around stars in the cloud of extremely hot vapor. Then it turns into ice and sticks to tiny dust particles. These particles stick together over time and become bigger objects, like comets, planets, and other things. Some of these become comets and planets in our own solar system. And this is how water is being spread across the universe, and it may be how it got to our planet and the moon too. Scientists think that the lunar ice might have journeyed here eons ago. Maybe it hitched a ride on water-rich asteroids that smacked into the moon's surface. All this has big implications for us. The southern pole is an ideal canvas for humanity to establish a real moon base. Imagine brick domes connected by secret underground tunnels. They'll be bustling with people busily operating computers. Some others will be cruising the lunar landscape in their jeeps or on their way to mine precious resources. We have some pretty cool ideas on how to build this. First, you probably imagine hauling hefty and water-draining shelters all the way from Earth. But maybe there's a more effective way. Think about our history as a civilization. Every time we ventured to a new place, we surveyed the surroundings for available resources and used them to survive and thrive. This is how we spread across our own planet. So why shouldn't we spread across the moon the same way? Now, you might wonder what resources the moon might offer. We know about the ice, and it can be turned into water. But we can clearly see that our planet lacks lush greenery and edible food. Well, it might not be obvious, but the moon does have something to offer: mineral resources and sunlight. Unlike Earth, where the sun rises and sets, the lunar poles offer quite a beautiful sight. The sun gracefully orbits the horizon the entire day, which means it can provide an almost uninterrupted source of power. Imagine living in a world bathed in perpetual sunlight. I'm sure the solar panels will love it. Me? Not so much. Still, we could use not only the sun's light, but also its heat. Honestly, we should just use everything. If we're left with spare metal while producing oxygen, find a purpose for that metal too. We need to treat the environment responsibly, not only on Earth, but on the moon as well. Which is why scientists are learning how to turn the moon's most abundant resources, regolith, into sturdy bricks. They've been quite inventive in figuring out how to create moon bricks. Scientists want to use the sun's heat to melt lunar dust, layer by layer, essentially creating a 3D printer for moon dust. Engineers have also cooked up bricks using solar ovens and zapped lunar soil with microwaves. They become quite adept at it. So yeah, perhaps we're going to establish a little brick factory on the moon and build regolith houses. It's like Minecraft in real life. As soon as you find some cool new material, you gotta build a tiny house with it. If successful, these bricks could be used to construct entire buildings, potentially covering inflatable modules or giving new life to abandoned landers. So, will astronauts need to become skilled bricklayers? Well, they won't do everything themselves. We'd have to create a small automated system involving robots working collaboratively. Humans will, of course, oversee the construction site. Despite all this automation, scientists believe that living on the moon is going to be, well, call it cozy. The designs may involve stacked living quarters or multi-purpose areas. However, there would be some challenges too. On the moon, things get extreme. Imagine scorching temperatures that can go up to 212 degrees Fahrenheit during the day, and at night, they plunge down to a chilly minus 290 degrees. And it's not just the weather. The moon gets relentlessly exposed to solar radiation, cosmic rays, and micrometeorite impacts. All these things gradually wear down anything on its surface. Another big challenge is the lunar dust. On the moon, there's no air to breathe, and the dust there can cause problems. And this one isn't only regular dust. It's super clingy and can even make astronauts sneeze and have watery eyes, as if they're having a lunar hay fever. It can also damage equipment and spacesuits. It's not something you want to mess with. Scientists have found that the dust is made when meteors hit the moon, creating tiny particles and sharp glass shards. It's toxic, and its tiny particles can float around in low lunar gravity, making it hard to breathe. Unlike on Earth, the Moon doesn't have wind or rain to clean it away. So now they're studying it to find out how to prevent this annoying problem from ruining their entire mission. There's more to this lunar haven than meets the eye. Scientists also want to delve into the mysteries of low-frequency electromagnetic waves there. These waves are whispers from the far reaches of the universe. These elusive signals have remained hidden from us for ages. We only caught some cacophony of radio and other background noise, but that's it. On the Moon's dark side, however, we can finally record and study them. Studying these waves will help scientists to unlock the secrets of the universe's origins. It's not just about the Earth or the Moon. We're talking about peering back to the very beginnings of our world. Our new lunar lab might help us to forever reshape our understanding of the cosmos. So, NASA has some big plans on the Moon now. Their Artemis mission completed a successful return to Earth in December 2022 after nearly a month in space. It ventured far beyond the Moon. This mission proved the capabilities of some of our recent technological developments that will help us explore Mars. The goal of Artemis is to establish a lasting presence on the Moon. They want to create a gateway, like a space station in orbit around the satellite, to help with the landings. Artemis 2 is set to carry astronauts to lunar orbit in 2024, and during Artemis 3, which should take place in the mid-2020s, 2 astronauts will touch down near the Moon's south pole. It's quite possible that the lunar base will be built within the next couple of decades. So, stay tuned.
People haven't set foot on the Moon in several decades, but the situation is going to change soon. NASA's Artemis program is going to send a few missions to Earth's natural satellite. The first astronauts might step on the surface of the Moon already in 2025, as part of Artemis 3, if the current schedule holds, that is. And then the next stage will start, and it will be an even more ambitious project than sending humans to the Moon again. NASA wants to construct a base camp at our satellite's south pole. Such an outpost will help the Artemis mission to break the previous record for the longest stay on the Moon. So far, it's 74 hours, 59 minutes, and 38 seconds. Plus, such a camp can serve as a jumping-off point for missions setting off for deep space. According to NASA, at first it's going to be a small camp, accommodating missions for a week or two. But soon, it'll grow in size and complexity and will be able to sustain crews for a couple of months at a time. There might also be an open-top rover similar to the one used in the Apollo missions and an RV. These options can provide mobility for astronauts while they live and work at the camp. With each new trip, the level of comfort of space explorers will increase. Specialists are now developing the technologies that will help people to work more easily on the Moon, far away from home. There's also hope that building such a camp can help us prepare for an even more challenging step: human exploration of Mars. For the camp to function properly, it's very important to be able to find and extract resources from the satellite's rocks and dust. These resources can include water ice, metals, oxygen, and even some building materials. It'll help to lighten the load with supplies delivered to the Moon. It can also potentially allow astronauts to remain there for longer periods of time. Now, why the lunar South Pole? There are 2 very important reasons. First, building the base camp there will allow astronauts to have periods of continuous light from the Sun. The Moon is tilted in such a way that its South Pole experiences up to 2 months of continuous light every year, when the Sun is circling above the horizon all the time. And all this abundant sunlight can provide the camp with a lot of solar power. At the moment, NASA is trying to design a solar array that could stay more than 30 feet in the air. This way, it'll be able to make the most of the available sunlight. The second reason for choosing this location is deep craters that have been shrouded in darkness for billions of years, also because of the Moon's peculiar tilt. Some of these craters haven't seen sunlight since the time of their formation. They're also known as permanently shadowed regions, and that's where scientists have found evidence of water ice. If we manage to access this frozen water and it turns out there's a lot of it there, it'll be hugely valuable for the inhabitants of the base camp. Plus, it might supply flights back to Earth, or further on to Mars. We don't know yet whether there's a lot of water in that region or whether it's free of contaminants. But NASA is going to find out. One of the ways to do it is to use Viper. This mobile robot is likely to arrive at the lunar South Pole in 2024. The Lunar Terrain Vehicle, or LTV for short, is scheduled to arrive on a mission in 2025. Astronauts will be able to operate it remotely, and it's likely to be able to avoid such hazards as rocks and craters on its own. Astronauts will then explore their surroundings either from the safety of the lander on earlier missions or later on from the base camp itself. Plus, NASA will use the LTV to conduct scientific or mission-related work even during periods of time when there will be no humans on the Moon. The vehicle will play a crucial role in searching for water ice and other resources. But even though the LTV's remote-controlled capabilities are quite innovative, its design isn't going to change much. It'll look almost like the rovers that have come before it. If astronauts decide to drive the vehicle with its top open, they will have to put on their spacesuits, and that's not very comfortable. Donning such a suit can easily take hours. Plus, the duration of missions always depends on how much oxygen each astronaut's spacesuit has left. That's where NASA's RV-like concept, known as the Habitable Mobility Platform, comes into play. If this project succeeds, the RV will have a pressurized interior and life support systems, meaning passengers will be able to have a ride without their spacesuits on. This will definitely make life easier for astronauts. The final design of the vehicle isn't ready yet, but the main goal is to allow several people to live and work inside the vehicle for up to 2 weeks. Now let's have a look at what the future lunar cabin might look like. Its design hasn't been finalized either, but NASA is looking at modular and inflatable structures. It may help to create larger spaces for crews to live in. Plus, such kinds of structures are more compact and lightweight, so it will be easier to transport them to the Moon. But there's one more intriguing possibility. How about a large-scale 3D printer that will use lunar soil and rock as its raw material? Such a machine might be able to produce bricks and other shapes, assembling dwellings from scratch. A prototype 3D printer is now building a test structure in Houston. Also, the first towns on the Moon could probably be built in craters. They might be covered with protective materials like plastic, reinforced with a net made of titanium and UV-resistant superfiber. The inhabitants would have to access their homes through airlock entrances dug into a mound. Bilbo Baggins would surely appreciate their aesthetics. On the Moon, gravity is way weaker than on our home planet. And while it can make it easier for astronauts to walk and even run on the Moon's surface, it's not so great in the long run. That's why inside the lunar base, there might be an artificial gravitational field. Without it, people would have problems with coordination, balance, and orientation in space. Plus, weight-bearing bones would lose 1 to 5% of mineral density per month. A geologist from the University of Notre Dame, who's been studying samples of lunar soil, says that rocks or dust may have a key role in protecting astronauts from radiation coming from solar flares and cosmic rays. On Earth, the planet's atmosphere and its magnetic field filter out most of this harmful radiation. But the Moon doesn't have the same shield because there's no atmosphere like on our planet there. The very weak one that our natural satellite has is made up of some unusual gases that haven't been found in the atmosphere of Earth, Mars, or Venus. That's why people working there will need extra protection. The experts say that up to 6 feet of lunar material might be needed to shield astronauts from the radiation. But besides building materials and water, there's another crucial resource on the Moon, and it's oxygen. NASA hopes to start extracting this gas from moon rocks. They also hope to find metals like aluminum. This could allow astronauts to live off the land, and the base would become much more self-sufficient than expected. It could turn into a resupply station for spaceships heading for Mars. But a colony on Mars would cost us trillions of dollars to construct and inhabit. It would take a long time for even one cargo ship to reach the red planet. Lunar camps are much easier to build and maintain.
there will likely be direct spaceship routes connecting the satellite with Earth, and people will need just 3 days to travel between these 2 points. That's one of the reasons the colonies on the moon will be growing, developing, and changing non-stop.
Our moon exploration project started out in 1969. Sure, there have been some problems along the way, but astronomers are certain we'll get back up there pretty soon and with better knowledge and technology. However, there's an 800-year-old trick that might become way more useful than fancy GPS tech and powerful rockets. It's called the Fibonacci sphere. Some scientists at a Hungarian university stumbled upon this idea while studying the moon. They believe it might be useful to better understand how the moon spins and how it's a bit squished while it goes around Earth. You might believe that our planet and its satellite are these perfect little spheres floating in space. Well, that's not true. They are in fact like slightly deflated soccer balls because of all the gravity, rotating movements, and tides. The GPS technology we use here on Earth is already adapted to these less than perfect ball proportions. Remember, our planet is a bit flattened at its poles. If we're going to make a map system for the moon, we need to do the same for its shape, called a solenoid, or what scientists call the moon's version of our Earth's shape. Since the moon is less compressed than our planet, scientists have been taking a shortcut until now. They've been looking at our satellite as a simple ball shape. However, with all these new projects coming up in the following decades and even some exciting trips we might end up having on the moon, we need to be more precise. Scientists now believe we should get the real data and start drawing an accurate picture of the moon. Here's where the Fibonacci sphere comes in handy. It's a clever solution that's been used by mathematicians to spread points out evenly on a ball. Scientists recently used it to map around 100,000 spots on the moon using data previously collected by NASA. And what they found was crucial for our understanding of the moon's shape. For instance, we now know that our satellite's poles are about 0.3 miles closer to the center compared to the moon's equator. Sure, it might seem like a tiny detail, but if we adjust our GPS software accordingly before we land on the moon again, it might save us from getting lost up there. This level of math hasn't been done since the 60s for the moon, but we already know it works wonders here at home, so it only makes scientists better prepared for future missions. This isn't the first time people have used Fibonacci's findings to come up with clever solutions. We've also seen it put to work in finance, agriculture, and in computer science. Let's see where it all came from. Legend has it that the Italian mathematician Fibonacci wasn't really that interested in mathematical sequences at first, but rather in rabbits? So, he came up with this interesting puzzle. What happens if you place a pair of rabbits in a certain space for a year? He also set some theoretical rules. For starters, all those bunnies come in boy-girl pairs, and they can start reproducing after just a month. Each month, each bunny pair adds one more pair of bunny offspring. The last rule was that all bunnies would be invincible for the year. Doing the math, he got this series of numbers. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and so on. If you look at this series again, you'll notice that every number is the sum of the two before it. The first two, that's your starting bunny pair. Next, you'll see the number 2, which is the first pair and their first offspring pair. Word caught on about this interesting sequence, and math lovers began studying it more closely. They started seeing this pattern very often in nature, like in how leaves grow on a plant or how seeds arrange on sunflowers. There's even a little experiment you can do to check it out. Start by grabbing some paper and a pen. Try drawing the Fibonacci spiral. Start with a tiny circle, then go bigger and bigger using those Fibonacci numbers. The first circle should just be a tiny dot on the paper, or the equivalent of 0. Next circle, 1 unit. Another circle, still 1 unit. Keep it going and you'll see that the circles form this spiral pattern. Even as it continues to grow, it keeps its shape. You might have also stumbled upon the Fibonacci spiral as a symbol of hypnosis. In all fairness, there's little evidence you can confuse someone by making them stare into a spiral for a while. But its effects on our focus and our optic nerves can't be ignored. After you've stared at a spinning spiral, you might see how objects get smaller or bigger depending on the direction of the swirl. It's easy to understand why some experience this sensation as hypnotizing. This interesting series of numbers appears in our day-to-day lives, even if we don't notice it. It can also be used in more practical instances, like converting miles to kilometers. Let's look at the series 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. Pick any two numbers side by side. Say 13 and 21. Do the calculations and you'll notice that 13 miles is about 21 kilometers. Same with 34 and 55. Music and math might not seem like they're connected. But if you had asked the great Mozart, he probably wouldn't have agreed. It seems he was very passionate about numbers from early on in his career. He loved finding cool number patterns in music, like some sort of hidden messages. His own sister even remembered him doodling math all the time, even on the sides of his music sheets. Some scholars believe he might have even played around with the Fibonacci numbers. If that's really the case, then he might have used the ration to balance out parts of his tunes. What about other types of art? Well, it's also said that Leonardo da Vinci used the golden ratio in his masterpieces, like the Vitruvian Man and the Mona Lisa. Also, when it comes to great pieces of architecture, the Parthenon might have used this pattern too. Anytime you see buildings with columns spaced just right, you can be certain that's where the builders drew inspiration from. The Great Pyramid of Giza is another great example. There's no official record to prove it, but the pyramid's shape is so close to the golden ratio that it's kind of obvious. You'll also see this pattern appearing naturally in our environment. Go out in our garden and check to see if you have any pine cones lying around. See those scales? They're set up in a pattern according to the Fibonacci sphere. Even the bones in our body seem to be growing based on the same proportions. We've got one torso, one head, and one heart. Then there's stuff that comes in pairs. Our arms, legs, eyes, and ears, for instance. For the number 3, think about the composition of our limbs and the 3 main sections in our hand. The wrist part, the middle palm part, and our fingers, which are also split into 3, by the way. Oh, speaking of fingers, their bone lengths have this ratio too. This design helps our fingers move smoothly, especially when grabbing objects. The Fibonacci sequence can be seen in the way ocean waves curve, and how rivers split and flow too. Weather patterns can also follow this rule. Some whirlpools and hurricanes form and spread out in the same way the Fibonacci spiral does. Zoom out, and you'll see that spirals aren't just found here on Earth. They're also everywhere in space, and it isn't random. Most galaxies, including our Milky Way, are spirals. Think of it like this. Generally, stars in a young galaxy don't all appear at once. Some are faster when developing, others take their time. This makes gravity pull in different ways, making the young galaxy spin like a disk. As it spins, different levels of gravity stretch it into getting these spiral arms. On the flip side, if all the stars in a young galaxy appear at the same time, gravity just smushes it all into an egg shape, or what the astronomers call elliptical.
Now look at this fancy granite kitchen countertop. This one can also be available on the moon. I mean, there's no production whatsoever as of now, but there's enough raw materials for the kitchen of your dreams. And by the way, granite on the moon can even prove this dark horse had plenty of water at some point. So it all started when scientists found this weird blob of heat on the far side of the moon. It's all because of a massive chunk of granite that's buried underground. Apparently, granite is pretty rare outside of Earth, so this is a big deal. According to the researchers, there's this old volcano on the moon that hasn't erupted in like 3.5 billion years. But it turns out it's still giving off some serious radiation. The scientists used a fancy new method with microwaves to measure the temperature below the moon's surface. They found this area that's about 31 miles across, where it's like 18 degrees warmer than the rest of the place. And it's right under a spot that collapsed and is full of silicon. It's not as thriving as Silicon Valley back on Earth, it's just a volcanic crater, but without all the lava spewing out. The scientists even compared it to those granite rocks you see in Yosemite, like El Capitan and Half Dome. You know, those giant rocks that look super majestic? Well, apparently, they're made of the same stuff. Researchers claim that granite is super common on Earth, but not anywhere else in our solar system. So this could change everything we know about other rocky planets. Right, now we know there's granite on the Moon, but why is that important to us? So, you know how granite forms on Earth? It's all thanks to water and plate tectonics teaming up to create these huge blobs of melted rock beneath the surface. But guess what? The Moon doesn't have any of that action going on, which makes granite super rare up there. But this discovery could give us some clues about what the Moon was like back in the day when it had volcanic activity. Without water, making granite becomes a real challenge. But somehow, someway, they found granite on the Moon. No water, no plate tectonics, but still, we got granite. So what does that mean? Did the Moon have water in this one spot? Or was it just ridiculously hot? I guess we'll need to give a tad more time for the scientists to figure it out. The water on the Moon is an issue, though. Duh. As of now, the Moon is bigger than the Sahara Desert, but somehow 100 times drier. Astronomers have been debating for ages whether there's any water on this celestial neighbor of ours. But in 2020, NASA's SOFIA mission finally confirmed that there is indeed water on the sunlit part of the lunar surface. Turns out those grains of lunar dust have little molecules of H2O hanging out on them. Back in 1645, when people first started gazing at the Moon, they were fascinated by these dark spots all over its surface. Dutch astronomer Michael van Lengren even made a map and called these spots Maria, which means seas in Latin. Sorry, Michael, they're just actually plains of basalt from ancient volcanic eruptions, but we still use the term Maria today. In 1892, an American astronomer named William Pickering discovered that the Moon has practically no atmosphere. No clouds, no atmosphere, no chance for water to stick around. So scientists started thinking that the Moon was as dry as a desert. But then, in the 1960s, a theoretical physicist named Kenneth Watson came along with an idea. He suggested that water ice could actually exist in the shadowy craters of the Moon that never see sunlight. These areas are called permanently shadowed regions. It was a mind-blowing concept at the time. The Apollo missions from 1969 to 1972 finally gave us the chance to look for water on the Moon up close and personal. But when the astronauts brought back soil samples, there was no sign of water. So everyone went back to thinking the Moon was bone dry. However, in 1994, NASA's Clementine mission suggested that there might be ice in these shadowed craters after all. And in 1998, the Lunar Prospector mission found evidence of hydrogen concentrations in the permanently shadowed areas. This was a strong indication of water ice at the lunar poles. The images weren't super clear, but it was still an exciting discovery. And finally, in 2008, scientists decided to take another look at those Apollo samples. They revisited the old data and found some hints that there might be water after all. It was like finding buried treasure in your own backyard. As you can see, the Moon is a pretty promising destination. It even has enough stuff to produce your food supplements – calcium, magnesium, you name it. Just kidding, it's not the best idea to munch on them to boost your diet. But there are a bunch of other applications they can be used for. Calcium is like the fourth most popular element hanging out in the lunar highlands. But here's the cool part. Pure calcium metal is actually super flexible and can conduct electricity like a boss when there's no oxygen around. Who knew, right? Anorthite is a rare gem here on Earth, but up on the Moon, it's partly central for calcium. It can even help make those groovy silicon-based solar cells. To make them, you need some lunar silicon, iron, titanium oxide, and of course, our buddy calcium and aluminum. It's like a recipe for solar success up there in space. The Moon even has precious metals like gold. In 2009, NASA was on a lunar mission and they found some gold in the lunar soil. They had a spacecraft right behind the rocket, equipped with a fancy spectrometer. Its job was to study all the debris that got released when the rocket crashed. And they found all sorts of chemicals, like carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, ammonia, sodium, hydrogen, and even a little bit of mercury, gold, and silver. Hey, vampires beware. Now I know it's been quite a while since then, like 14 years to be exact, but measuring how much gold is actually there has been a real challenge. You see, it's hiding deep beneath the lunar regolith, making it tricky to get an accurate count. Yeah, metals are fun and lunar water may have existed, but what about food? Good news, everyone! Scientists are saying that plants can actually grow on the moon, but don't expect a luscious orchard. It'll be more like a moderate garden with just a couple of beds. Here's the scoop. A while back, those awesome Apollo astronauts collected samples of lunar surface material called regolith and brought them back to Earth. Fast forward 50 years, and NASA decided to use 3 of those samples to try growing plants for the very first time. They used dirt from under the lunar rover bumper to grow these plants. The team added water and seeds to the samples, giving each plant a gram of regolith. Then they placed them in a clean room and added nutrient solutions every day. And they succeeded. During that challenge, the brilliant minds dealt with small plants like mustard greens in the nutrient-poor lunar soil. Yeah, we'll have to export olive oil from Earth to dress it. So, plants can indeed grow in the moon's soil. However, they won't be as strong and healthy as the ones grown on good old Earth soil, or even the ones in the control group grown in a lunar simulant made of volcanic ash. But hey, it's just a start. We're still to find out if our dear moon is hiding more treasures.
NASA has some incredible plans for the moon. For example, their next ambitious lunar program, Artemis II. They've set their sights on landing astronauts, including the first woman and the next man, on the moon by 2024. Artemis is all about building a sustainable presence on the moon. They're planning to establish a lunar gateway, a sort of space station in lunar orbit, which will serve as a jumping-off point for lunar landings. And let's not forget about the cool lunar landers. Scientists are developing the mighty Space Launch System rocket, which will launch the Orion spacecraft carrying astronauts towards the moon. Then there's the Human Landing System, a snazzy lunar lander that will gently touch down on the moon's surface, allowing astronauts to explore and conduct amazing scientific experiments. And NASA isn't going alone this time. They're teaming up with international partners, like the European Space Agency, to make this lunar dream a reality. But all these wonderful dreams might be ruined by something that seems super small and insignificant at first. Picture this: no atmosphere, no air to breathe, and suddenly, a mysterious haze and radiant beams of light appear at sunrise and sunset. It's as if the moon is putting on a celestial show. But there is a twist to this beauty. During the Apollo 17 mission in 1972, this beautiful sight made one of the NASA astronauts, Harrison Schmitt, sneeze and made his eyes water. He called it lunar hay fever. This mysterious fever affected all 12 moonwalkers. From sneezing fits to stuffy noses, those astronauts experienced symptoms as if they caught a cold. It took days for the reactions to fade away. This event led to a discovery about lunar dust and its darker side. When scientists found out about these rays, they rolled up their sleeves and delved into their origins. And here's what they discovered. Those radiant bands of light were actually caused by sunlight sneaking through layers of teeny-tiny lunar dust. The dust was composed of small particles and sharp glass shards, and was lurking everywhere. And it turned out that this lunar dust was a sneaky villain. It brought a whole host of problems. Astronauts who found themselves with impaired vision were just the beginning. The troublemaker went even further, damaging precious machinery and causing electronic malfunctions. It even had the audacity to corrode components and smelled like burnt gunpowder inside the spacecraft. Yikes. It clings to everything, coating surfaces like a mischievous blanket. It can clog up equipment, get into delicate machinery, and even mess with astronauts' spacesuits. In 1972, things got really hairy again. The Apollo 17 astronauts faced a nightmare. After just 22 hours of gallivanting on the lunar surface, their spacesuits suffered irreparable damage. Yes, you heard that right. Irreparable. The dust diminished astronauts' mobility, making it harder for them to move around and perform their moonwalks with grace. And no matter how hard they tried to clean it off, it clung on for dear life, leaving the spacesuits in a sorry state. So, as you can see, it poses some serious challenges for future moon missions. But our intrepid scientists aren't giving up. To solve this problem, they have to understand how lunar dust forms and why it's so darn clingy. They found out that it all begins with meteorite impacts. When these space rocks crash into the moon, they generate a fine dust that fills the air. Sometimes these impacts even cause minerals to melt, forming sharp glass shards that mix with the dust. Talk about a moon makeover. The dust is also filled with silicate, a material commonly found on volcanic planets. Silicate inhalation can cause serious lung problems for Earth's miners, so you can imagine the trouble it can cause on the moon. A recent study found that even a scoop of replica moon dust was toxic enough to destroy up to 90% of lung and brain cells exposed to it. But it gets worse. The low gravity on the moon allows those tiny particles to float around for much longer, penetrating deeper into the lungs. Imagine breathing particles 50 times smaller than a human hair for months. That's a recipe for trouble. And you see, on the moon's surface, things are a bit different than here. There are no rainstorms or strong gusts of wind to blow this dust away. There is also no atmosphere to protect the surface. So without the natural forces of wind and water erosion like we have on Earth, these dry particles stick around persistently. And to make matters more electrifying, the moon is constantly showered by radiation from the sun. This exposure gives the dust an electric charge. The solar winds create positively and negatively charged particles. The particles then buzz around, repelling each other and giving rise to those radiant bands of light that the Apollo 8 astronauts witnessed. It's like a disco party on the moon. ESA, the European Space Agency, has gathered a team of experts to study the lunar dust. They're working with simulated moon dust mined from a volcanic region in Germany to understand its behavior and effects. Engineers also need to find a way to protect future astronauts and equipment. Engineers in NASA want to create spacesuits that can survive not 1, not 10, but a whopping 100 extravehicular activities on the lunar surface. That's like spending 800 hours out there, exploring and having a blast. Besides that, NASA initiated the Breakthrough, Innovative, and Game-Changing Idea Challenge in 2021. It was open to clever university students from all over the world. These young minds put their thinking caps on and unleashed a wave of innovative solutions. For example, they proposed using special fibers that conduct electricity, inspired by fluffy chinchilla hair. Just like how chinchillas stay dust-free, these fibers would help keep the lunar dust at bay. A furry friend lending a helping paw, isn't that adorable? Another bright idea involved an electrically charged brush activated by UV radiation. It's like a magical wand that zaps away the dust with a flick. Abracadabra, lunar dust be gone. And let's not forget the fabric inspired by clever insects. These insects have pollen-collecting structures that repel unwanted dust. So our ingenious students thought, why not mimic that? They designed a fabric with similar properties, creating a shield against the sneaky lunar particles. What's remarkable about these ideas is that they all use the power of charge to fight the dust. They cleverly repel it from the spacesuits, keeping them clean and protected. And even though all these ideas sound pretty great, scientists in NASA unleashed another, even better solution: carbon nanotubes. It's a great way to revolutionize spacesuit fabric. What makes these carbon nanotubes so special? Well, they possess some amazing superpowers. First off, they're superconductive, meaning they can carry electricity like nobody's business. It's like having a lightning bolt trapped inside a microscopic tube. Not only that, but these carbon nanotubes are tougher than the toughest meteors. They have the strength to withstand the harsh lunar environment, where even a speck of dust can cause trouble. Imagine having a suit made of a material that's stronger than Superman's cape. So, NASA's scientists decided to weave these extraordinary carbon nanotubes into the spacesuit fabric. The electrodes were carefully integrated into the outer layer of the fabric, making it a force to be reckoned with. But how do they banish the lunar dust? Well, here comes electrifying science again. When activated by a special alternating current, the electrodes create powerful electric fields. These fields work like magnets, repelling both charged and uncharged dust particles away from the spacesuit. Picture this like a dance party, where the dust particles are the uninvited guests, and the electric fields are the bouncers, swiftly escorting them out. Thanks to this technology, lunar dust doesn't stand a chance against our astronauts. Also on the bright side, the lunar soil can be used to make bricks for shelters. It can also help extract oxygen for astronauts to survive on the moon for long periods of time. When life gives you lemons, make a lemonade, right? So, let's cheer on our NASA Dream Team as they embark on this epic lunar quest. Let's hope that they succeed in their findings, and the next moon mission won't be a big problem. Stay tuned.